Tonight on the Tuesday edition of the Buddy Martin Show, tell it like it is Tuesday. We have a new national champion in college football, and for the second year in a row, the SEC is absent from the national championship game.
Absent.
What does the SEC need to do to get back on top?
More money.
The Florida Gators basketball team breaks through, bounces back, and we just look at a lot of things. New quarterback for the Florida Gators, and not many staff changes to the chagrin of some of you. So all that and more with Rob Brown of SEC Sidelines, Brendan Martin, Gator Bait Media. I'm your host, Lauren Meadows. Let's get with it.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Buddy Martin Show. I'm your host, Lauren Meadows, here with Rob Brown of SEC Sidelines and Brendan Martin of Gator Bait Media. We have a new national champion. The Ohio State Buckeyes defeated the Notre Dame Fighting Irish to claim their second national title in the playoff era. They were the first champ in the initial playoff, and now they're the first champ in the 12-team playoffs. So shout out to my home state of Ohio.
Just go ahead.
No. Yeah. I'm not, because I want to make sure that everybody knows where my allegiance lies. But at the same time, I mean, just the way that the Buckeyes were able to bounce back, things were almost catastrophic, as those of us from Ohio know that when you lose to the Wolverines, it's pretty much over. And for them to bounce back, steady things up, and go through what we all talked about was going to be a grind with this playoff and expanding the games and things like that. The ability to basically take care of business. Will Howard was able to kind of pick up, not where he left off, but kind of pick himself off the canvas from a disastrous game against Michigan, and then pretty much played pretty well the whole playoff. So, I don't think it was ever a doubt, although people were rooting for Notre Dame. Rob, I think Ohio State clearly was the better team, and we talked about it. We thought there may be a couple late touchdowns, but I'm not sure that thing ever got as dicey as maybe the score would have indicated. Your thoughts?
Highlights of the game were Notre Dame's first drive, which took just under 10 minutes, but they didn't have the players out on the edge, that wide out. They didn't have the running back. They didn't have the depth. They didn't have the speed. They didn't have the line of scrimmage guys on offense or defense. They didn't have the quarterback. Other than that, it was fairly even.
Yeah, I mean, I think that somebody was saying that somebody texted me and said, well, Notre Dame doesn't have any corners. I said, well, they have corners. They just can't defend the Ohio State receivers. I mean, you look at Carnell Tate, number one in his class. Emeka Ibuka, number one in his class. And, last year, Jeremiah Smith and DJ Lagway were basically 1 and 2 to who was the top recruit in the entire country. Yeah. So, I mean, just a plethora of talent up there. Obviously, money well spent, as well as the way that the people react to football down there. I don't know if you guys saw the video, but did you see the fans break into the horseshoe to celebrate the win? Did you guys see that?
No.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's a different tale. We've talked about it enough as we've kind of discussed Ohio State, but that's the difference between you have the SEC where it just means more, and then you have Ohio State, and then you have everybody else. But when you look at, and Rob, you've touched on it, the affection for high school sports there, particularly football, and the history there, I mean, it matters to them as well. And, they travel well. They follow the team, and, that I thought that was a a perfect way to kind of sum up the way that they feel about their football team is that they literally, would risk arrest and everything else to make their way to to the horseshoe and celebrate and even plant a flag. So like I said, like you said, Rob, I mean, I think that Notre Dame, for all that they did, I mean, this was not the matchup that they wanted. They did not match up well at all with the Buckeyes, and the Buckeyes kind of play football, kind of 53 and a third and more lateral, where Notre Dame wants to turn it into a phone booth fight, and Ohio State really wasn't having that.
Well, look at Ohio State, the core of that team. Jeremiah Smith, Fort Lauderdale product, could have been a Gator. Will Howard from Pennsylvania, be at Kansas State. Caleb Downs, Atlanta, after playing at Alabama. Quinshon Judkins, Park Crossing, Montgomery, Ole Miss, Ohio State. A lot of Southern flavor on that team, but they got also a bunch of kids that had been in Columbus, guys, their entire careers, 4 and 5 years. And I think Ohio State, you go back to Paul Brown, Woody Hayes, Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, and now Ryan Day. 5 different coaches have won national championships at that school. Oklahoma is the only school in America that has 4 different head coaches who've won 100 or more games at Oklahoma. It ain't as easy as it used to be now that they're in the SEC, but they'll figure it out. A lot of pride out there. But Ohio State is exactly pretty much like an SEC program. They've always been, if you look in the last 50, 60 years, and you look at the number of games they've won and the number of games, say, Alabama has won, I think there are 2 games separating them. That's it.
Right.
And amazing. I mean, it's just a great program.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. And I mean, you talk about the Ohio State win, and we'll kind of put Ohio State to bed, but I think even more glaring, as much as the snow in the Southeastern Conference is kind of, you got snow in Louisiana, got snow in the panhandle of Florida, people in Pensacola dealing with 4 to 5 inches, but also the fact that for the second year in a row, no SEC school in the final. And even though the teams have made the playoff, they have been absent from the final. I tend to think that maybe that's a one-off, maybe a 2-off. I don't see a trend necessarily, but there have been a lot of SEC schools. Ohio State spent the second most money next to Texas, and there have been some SEC schools that have been slow to maybe adopt the NIL model, including one here in our area here that kind of was down a little bit. But Rob and Brendan both, when we look at the absence of the SEC and we see guys going from, like a Quinshon Judkins and a Caleb Downs who left Alabama and Ole Miss respectively to go on to go to Ohio State, and then others that have gone on to other programs. But you had Ole Miss who really, doubled down on it and spent some money to take this thing to the next level. Do you see a trend here, or is it something that, in a lot of ways it just happened to be that way? Or is it that the conference schedule is so daunting that asking the team to go out and get a 15th, a 16th, and a 17th win is just too much to ask with the way that these guys cannibalize each other?
All right. I'll throw this out there. I think back in 1992, there was a lot of concern, a lot of consternation when the SEC went to a divisional format. And there was fear that Alabama could lose to Florida and the SEC would be knocked out of playing for the national championship. Well, those fears were abated quickly in year 1 when Alabama beat Miami 34-13. I don't think we've dodged the bullet this time as a conference. What I see, 1 through 16, where do you take a day off? Where's the easy out? It's over. I mean, Vanderbilt, if you want to know how much money is just in Belle Meade, there are 35 or 40 people there that can stroke a check that will blow your mind. There's some country music people up there that love Vandy. They're starting to pick up some momentum. I think the SEC is at a crossroads right now. And if this conference doesn't get its shit together and get a commissioner who will stand up and fight for this conference instead of trying to, go along to get along, that's what I think happened. And I think it burned the hell out of the SEC because you could make a case for South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama. I don't care. Alabama, cosmetically, losing to Vandy, losing to Oklahoma the way they did wasn't good. But this conference better double down. But you've also had the last 4 years, two programs, Florida and Auburn, over on the side of the road with 4 bald tires and no gas. They're coming back. I saw that on 3 pick. I think they've got Florida at number 9 in the preseason, Auburn at number 11. There's going to be a shift, but everybody is spending money now, and the SEC is too. But I think Kirk Herbstreit played his hand talking about these big market, Midwestern, Notre Dame, Ohio State. The SEC in the last 20 years has made college football really what it is, just fanatical with these incredible runs. So I think the SEC's just got to decide, how deep are we as a conference going to dig, okay? Because if you're taking Alabama against Indiana, South Carolina against SMU, and let's say Ole Miss against Boise, come on.
Right. I mean, I agree. I agree with you. I mean, we've talked about it. I think that when we broke it down, I mean, like I said, I love the ham sandwich analogy. You got your last ham sandwich. Who you betting it on? And I mean, I think that that's when you get in there and you mentioned the commissioner, and you're the first, and I want to touch on this. You're the first that, because everybody seems to love Greg Sankey, and you're the first person that is really close to this. You're dialed in. You talk to a lot of great people on your show from a number of different schools within the SEC. Is, at one time, 2-3 years ago, when everybody was calling for a commissioner of college football, Greg Sankey's name was at the top of the list.
Yeah.
Is this a byproduct? Has his popularity maybe come back to the pack because of this in this first year of the playoff? Or is that something that you personally, Rob, feel like, or can you feel the swell based on the people you talk to on your show?
I don't have anything against Greg Sankey. I just think that he is so powerful. He thought by being in that room that his presence alone would ensure that the SEC would be treated fairly. And it was a 180 on that. Okay. 75 to 80% of the TV sets in America live in the geographical footprint that is the Big Ten. Don't think that did not matter. Okay. But we've got the state of Texas with 30 million people that we know of. 23 million people. Hold on. 4 months today. I mean, it's a lot of people. Georgia pushing 12 million. Okay. So I think that the SEC, watching what's happened the last 2 years, Michigan and now Ohio State win the national championship. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. And I think Greg Sankey will hear from the coaches, the athletic directors, and the university presidents in the SEC. Hey, look, fight for us or we'll get somebody that will. Right. I mean, that's just, you could tell Indiana, Ohio State was the 4th team in the Big Ten, and they got a home game. Tennessee was the number 3 team in the SEC, and they had to go on the road.
Right.
That doesn't add up right.
Right, but I think they could have played that game in at a pilot gas station, and Ohio State.
Well, Neyland's a tough place to play.
Yeah, but I think that,
in fairness, Florida went up there, and if you don't lose your quarterback,
you win the football game.
Like I said, I picked the Gators to win 8 games. I'm picking them next year. Again, I look at it differently than y'all do. Sometimes you can know too much. It's like when picking stocks, we call it analysis paralysis, But I think Florida's got that element. They got DJ Lagway, and they got people around him. Offensive coordinator, that's another story. But I think the SEC has so much pride. I think this league's going to double down, triple down. to stop this because they're losing control on the surface.
Right. And Brendan, you talked about Rob didn't really allude to it, but I think, it brings us to this point. You discussed money. You said money. Is it truly just an NIL issue in your opinion, Brendan, or is it something that almost like you got comfortable, there were some coaching changes, maybe some quick to hires and quick to fires as well? Or, I mean, is this an NIL issue? You and I have had this conversation regarding some of the issues that Florida had early on. Is NIL the solution, getting this thing buttoned up, or like I said, is it just a one-off, or is it just that people want to go? The Oregon is kind of crept in and grabbed, and the fact that Ohio State can pull guys from SEC schools and get them to come there after year 1 or 2. What do you really see? I mean, when you talk about the money.
I see that it just creates the parity amongst the teams that didn't matter as much anymore. And if I'm going to sit in line to play and can make a couple of bucks somewhere else, why am I going to go in the SEC? See, like, that's the thing. The SEC got lazy. Like, SEC got real lazy in the sense of, like, Sankey kind of thought, during, I think, SEC media days that he was going to be the leader of this whole college football sort of revolution. The SEC was sort of driving that narrative, and everyone was kind of looking at the SEC of what to do. I don't know if he got drunk on that. I don't think he's per se like that, but I think to some degree, he's looked past, really prioritizing, promoting his conference, and if you look at, I think the ripple effect of some of that is, it's like, well, then, if we're not going to place a priority on the culture and things that the SEC has created for college football, and we're not going to promote those things as hard as we were in the past, then I think, you've got players who are going to lose that desire to go and want to play for Florida or want to play for Tennessee because they grew up, sort of loving that team. And it's real hard in the SEC with 16 teams now, and everything's bunched up at the same part of the country. There's only so much money, in the end. So I guess, yeah, to me, it is about the money, because if you look at the $20 million that Ohio State just spent, the $6.2 million that they spent on Chip Kelly, and, you're going to tell me that Florida's going to compete next year against Ohio State. I don't think that's a conversation.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's yet to be seen. And I know that if Florida has done anything, I guess, over the last year, is they have tried to grab that NIL, that mantra and bring it to the forefront. And, I think you're seeing a little bit of that. Maybe, I don't want to get into people's business, but I think the basketball team and their success is a little bit representation of that, where, we've been told that there were certain amounts of money spent to bring guys in, as well as keep guys here that were thought to be extremely important. So you have that in play. And I think Florida, and Rob mentioned, I think people underestimate the amount of money in a place like Nashville, and what Vanderbilt's resurgence this year has kind of brought some attention there. Obviously with baseball, they do a nice job. So it'll be interesting to see, between the talent that exists and the money and how that's being handled, if that will, will change the landscape in football. Now, in basketball, we're in a whole different direction. And I think that you're starting to see,
basketball's more organized. Like basketball, we hit basketball. Basketball's got it figured out. March Madness is awesome, right?
Right.
And Rob, we've discussed this. If I want to see my money, do something, it's a lot easier to make that run and see that on basketball than it is on football, because you've got, only a very small amount of players so you can make a difference quickly.
Yeah. But I mean, go ahead, Robin.
No, I was going to say, when I brought this up this morning, when Brendan and I were talking with our guest on the show,
Kevin
people said, what happened to ACC basketball? What's happened to the, Tobacco Road?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I tell them? The SEC is what's happened to ACC basketball, because these kids are staying home. They're not going up there anymore. I mean, they're going to go to the O-Dome. They want to go play at the Neville. They even want to play at the old airport hangar, Coleman Coliseum in Alabama.
Yeah, I was just there last week.
Yeah, and that's a damn cool place, man.
Yeah.
And people love basketball when there's a commitment. Okay, so now, Greg Sankey done so many great things, but you get complacent, you get fat and happy. That's when you get knocked off. And I think Brendan and I were at media days. You just feel this, man. Just Rome burned while Nero fiddled. That's what's happening to the SEC. And what's happened to the SEC now is the Big Ten is Exhibit A, and Exhibit B is everybody can pay players. I mean, we've always had a reputation in this league nationally of doing 50 in a 15-mile-an-hour speed zone. Okay, we've always pushed it.
Mm-hmm.
I know we have, and I mean, I was born in the afternoon, but not this afternoon. We're going to have to make a bigger commitment because Oregon, I don't know what it is about Oregon, though. They can't seem to get those dominant guys on the line of scrimmage and keep them there. I look at the talent. This is what's crazy. Paul Feinbaum was on the show with us Friday morning, and he made a comment about the disconnect between a lot of fans and different programs around the country. We better address these problems right now. The NCAA played kick the can when student athletes decades ago asked for basic stuff like long-term health care benefits, maybe a pension or some sort of a stipend, per diem or whatever. Oh, no. They ignored it. And what happened? What happened is where we are right now. So we need to have a meeting at Callaway Gardens or Weeki Wachee Park, the glass bottom boats in Florida, or go to the Everglades. But we better figure this out before this little brush fire becomes a massive forest fire.
Right. And I want to I agree with you. And I want to dive into the hoops as a whole with the SEC, including Florida here. But let's get to our sponsors. Melda Law, the only official injury law firm. There you go.
Hey, listen, I'm leading you, dog. I'm
okay.
I'm waiting on you. Just go. Okay. I'm waiting on you. I'm right. I know you don't need to wait on me. Don't wait on me, Daddy. I got that.
Melda Law, the only official injury law firm of the Florida Gators. We won't back down. It's ticket season, basketball season, other sports around the corner. Melton Law does a great job if you follow them on their Instagram or Facebook page, and they do a lot of great giveaways. Yours truly was actually won a contest last week, and we got to hang out with Jeffrey Melton and his lovely wife. Got to present the game ball at the Texas game. So cool atmosphere, great experience for my wife and I. So we have to get that picture up. I'd send it to you, get it up next week or something like that. But great opportunity. I think they have a giveaway for next week's Georgia game as well. So follow them on Instagram, Facebook, Melton Law. We won't back down. So as we kind of move forward and we talk about where the SEC is, but this basketball thing, not only where the basketball team, the conference is going, but this basketball team and the Florida Gators with, had a little stumble last week at home against Ole Miss and then picked themselves up at home against Missouri and then picked themselves up and to take out the Texas Longhorns. Sellout, I think it was the third largest crowd right there, largest crowd in O-Dome history. The place was rocking and kind of a physical game. Wasn't necessarily the best basketball game as far as, the art of the game. But the Florida Gators showed that they can, get a win in a number of different ways and, sit fifth in the country. Somebody noted that, every national champion in the last 17 years has been in the top 5 at this point in the season. So that's a good omen for the Florida Gators. They go to South Carolina tomorrow, which is a tough place to play. South Carolina kind of right there in the middle of the road. But, right now the Florida Gators playing as good as anybody.
Yeah, you talked about basketball. I like this question from Perry Mason, who, by the way, never lost a case. The only time he ever lost, it was overturned on appeal to that district attorney, Hamilton Berger. Poor guy. But he's making a great point, talking about Big East. Remember Big Monday, Big East?
Absolutely.
I loved that, the late 80s and the 90s. I mean, I was addicted to it. I'm an SEC guy. The SEC right now, so wherever it's like a hydra. You cut one head off, another one pops up. The dominance in basketball right now, softball. Notice I don't say women's softball because we don't have a beer gut league for the guys in college. But softball is ginormous. Track and field, which is, I think I love track and field as much as anything. Swimming and diving. We need to bring wrestling back, but the SEC is so competitive, and Perry's on a roll tonight. Look at South Carolina last year. And look at them this year. Look at Texas. Look at Arkansas. And I might add, watching Cal build the football program, watching Perry's a trip, man. But I mean, really. but watching Cal build Memphis, his first 4 years, people were like, this guy is like a used Edsel, like a Dodge Dart, and then it took off. Arkansas fans can't hang on. But this league, you can't, again, name me somewhere where there's not a commitment to winning. But what I think we better do as a conference is this league, Florida's got, you say Gator Nation, 6.5 million people. That is a ginormous number of people. And there's a lot of money out there. And I don't know if the difference is a lot of these people have moved to Florida from somewhere else. So they're located in Florida. Their heart is somewhere else. I don't know what it is, but whoever organizes that collective down there, if they do it right, Florida will be an unstoppable force by sheer numbers.
Yeah, no doubt. And hit the like and subscribe button for the Buddy Martin Show, as well as Gator Bait Magazine. Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at Florida, when I was talking about South Carolina is 0-5 in the SEC. They were 10-3 at one time, is what you basically. So, I mean, you look at the talent in this conference is just unbelievable. And, Florida definitely could be, running into a buzzsaw, going to South Carolina, no doubt. But yeah, I mean, I think that this team that Ty Golden has put together is just so well built. And they're able to play in so many different ways. But, the biggest thing is they rebound. They rebound the basketball. I mean, they are active on the glass. And I think that's what keeps them in games. If you look at the close games that they won, I was at the big game in Charlotte against UNC. Key rebounds and key situations and second possessions that a lot of times lead to open threes for guys like Will Richard, Clayton Jr., and Elijah Martin. And the way that this team is able to just continue to grind out and the commitment to defense. This is a team that gave up 100 points in a first-round game in the NCAA tournament. And other than that game in Kentucky, I mean, they've defended extremely well. And, I mean, you look at them 5th ranked in the country. They go to South Carolina, get that win. I mean, you gotta defend home. And it was kind of disappointing last week at the loss to Missouri. But going into somebody's gym and getting a win in the SEC, like I said, I don't care who you are. I think Oklahoma's 0-4, right? 0-5, and they were undefeated at one time, have won a conference game. I mean, Oklahoma is an extremely good basketball team. And Rob, you hit on it. It's not just basketball. It is softball. Softball had every team make the NCAA tournament last year.
Yeah.
Baseball had, I think, 7 or 8. And, Florida made it to the College World Series again for the second year in a row. Track and field is dominant, especially now with Texas coming in. Eldrick Florio, his bunch, they'll be in the mix as well. They won the women's title last year. Florida won the men's. So you have the 2 top track programs in the same conference. So even though football may be slacking the last 2 years, the other teams have picked up the slack immensely. So we have we're looking at a much better, overall sports program within the SEC. Would you say, Rob?
Yeah, look, the Gators have won 269 SEC championships. That's about 111 more than the closest competitor. I think that's Georgia. That's an unbelievable commitment. But you look at softball, you bring in Texas and Oklahoma, you bring in number 1 and number 2 in the country. I mean, you're just bringing sand to the beach, a lot of sand.
Right. And I mean, you look,
it's tough.
well, and you mentioned softball. I mean, this could probably be Tim Walton's best team, a guy that had back-to-back national titles and is fielding his best team probably since he's been here. I mean, so you talk about Texas and Oklahoma coming in, Florida, and if you like softball late in the year, who comes to Gainesville? Texas, followed by Oklahoma to finish the regular season. So the SEC is rounding out a lot of different sports, and with that, we bring in Buddy Martin, the man, the myth, the legend. Been a little under the weather, but glad to see him out. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, guys, I'm doing much better. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm going to interrupt this good conversation you got going tonight. Really good one, the three of you. And I just want to say I want to take a little bit of the issue with Rob. I kind of like woke up today and realized I've been in like a long winter's nap for like 6 years. Think about it. When we were in the middle of the pandemic, 6 years ago, it was this month. It all started then. And where we've come from then, and remember, it wasn't that long ago where Sankey was a superhero because Kevin Warren of the Big Ten wanted to shut it all down.
Yep.
Commissioner then, he's long since been gone, and Sankey held it together. Without him holding it together, there wouldn't be any college football as it is today. But they played, they got it in. It's been a rough few years. I feel like I've just sort of waked up and realized, like Rick Van Winkle, they just played a national championship game after all those years of talking about it. And suddenly they played one. We might not like the outcome. I'm not buying into the Big Ten uprising, them being dominant. I think there'll be a big factor. Yes, they do have resources. And they, like Coach Spurrier used to say, their players have scholarships too. So I will say that this is going to bring out the best in the in the SEC, because as Fransbury will tell you, it was the oppression of the so-called Northern aggression, which got the SEC this first notoriety back in the day when beating the Northern teams meant everything. They didn't play Big Ten teams that much, hardly ever, but certainly it was a big deal when they did. Now, having said that, we saw the wrecking ball that was Ohio State last night. My goodness, it was amazing. Notre Dame was a nice little story, and I really enjoyed it. But there was so much. And by the way, you guys mentioned 21 million. I heard today there were a number of teams who had that much money or more. So, yes, it's about the money. But I want to get back to one key thing, and I'll stop talking. That is the disconnect that Feinbaum talked about it. We talked about it on this show a couple of times. Look, I'd like to bring in politics. Look what happened to the Democratic Party. They didn't listen to people. They didn't listen to their people. And the Republican beats their socks off because they listened to the people. And what happens when you start getting that arrogance and you think you know it, you can lose control. If you lose this fan base, and like Feinbaum says, there's a lot of unhappy people out there. If it continues to grow and suddenly it makes people want to get, Rob, you talk about it all the time. Your callers talk about it. They don't like the game the way it's going. But what can they do? Well, I don't know, but something's got to be done because 5 more years of this, we might not have any more championship games in the conference or whatever. I love the football being played. I love the quality of the games. The season was too long. By the time it got here, I was kind of worn out and didn't really care who won. That you don't want. You don't want them not caring. So a lot of things happened that were good. I don't want to say it was a bad season. It wasn't. It was very good. I hope if they can learn from their mistakes and go forward now, we have a chance to get it even better. But right now, I still think Sankey is the best guy out there and the best reason you want to keep him in offices, he does have to unified. It's not about the commissioner making rules. It's about each individual school. You guys talked about it. The power of the people in Belmead and Nashville. The money groups. Rob, you deal with them all the time. It's the individual teams with the money that will make it change in this league, make a change in the game, hopefully for the better.
Yeah, no doubt, buddy. And I want to ask you one thing. I mean, you were on top of this, before we met, but I know you wrote an article and you talked about national conferences, basically where we are now, and super conferences. But as far as the playoff is concerned, is 12 too many? Not enough? Is 8 a good number where everybody plays the same? You don't have the buys? I mean, when you were thinking about this, when you wrote those articles talking about national conferences, did you see a playoff coming? And in your mind, what did the great Buddy Martin envision when he thought about a college football playoff?
March Madness and what they had done to college basketball was the model. In 1980, Larry Klein, who's, by the way, still alive, one day I'll get him on the show. He used to work for the NCAA. I hired him at the Daily News. We talked about what would happen in college football, got his act together, and began to get the marketing in the way that the NFL did it. Well, they've done that. Unfortunately, it's too much like the NFL right now. My vision of it was, I said at the time, I didn't know. I'd say, take your top 60 teams, whatever it may be, top 50, 60 teams, whatever it may be, and play it down like you do in college basketball and play it like a tournament. And I still think that. I think even the conference championship games could be used in that mix. I think there'll be some teams that just can't compete. Some schools who can't afford it. Let them go. Let them have what used to be Division II and have their championships. But the big boys got to play for the big money and the big numbers and the money you're going to need. You don't get those having the TV ratings. So you got to have the best package. No more powder puff games. People don't got to pay a lot of money for them. You got that. Hopefully, they're not going to throw out the baby with the bathwater. We're going to lose our conference championship games. My vision of it was to take, let's just say, top 48 teams and make up a ranking and play them down and come up with your regular final Sweet 16 and what have you. Go from there. So to me, it didn't matter about the final number as long as you got the right representation and they had the head-to-head competition.
Yeah, and I'll kind of throw it out there. All of America ain't happy today, but I'm happy because we had football last night. So let's keep the real thing and keep it about sports. But buddy, yeah, I think that you bring up a lot of good points, and I think that as this thing progresses, it's going to be interesting because if somebody said that, for instance, the conference championship games cost somebody or a loss or got them in and you benefited from not playing in a conference championship game, I mean, I think that's a discussion. Rob has alluded to it, the cannibalization of teams within this conference. It could just, continue to rear its head if that's really the issue. But I think that it kind of bends itself to, going into next year, we could be talking about, does a 10-2 Florida get in? Does a 9-3 Florida get in with the schedule they play and that kind of thing? This could be a real discussion on, where this thing is going. And this year, Florida fans were kind of on the outside looking in, Auburn fans. But like you said, Rob, based on where they're ranked going into the season, they're going to make the playoff.
Yeah. And by the way, did you guys see what the number was out of Vegas on Florida's over-under?
I did not.
Yeah, it came out today, I guess it was. I think it's 6.5.
Mm.
And that makes it interesting if it's 6.5.
Right.
Yeah, I certainly think they can match that. So I'm still trying to get my brain uncluttered from all the things we had to learn about this year and trying to understand. Remember, like Florida got a new quarterback, Harrison Bailey. All right. I can't store all that data in my head. I didn't realize.
We're going to talk about it here in a minute.
I mean, there's too much going on. I mean, we talked about it today. My friend, Carlson Reese, he was a baseball nut, and all baseball fans know this. Before free agency, you could name every player on every roster, probably their ERAs and their batting averages. All right. Now you have a hard time naming the franchises, and college football now is so much bigger. How do you keep up, Rob? How do we keep up? How do we know what's going on in Knoxville and in Oregon and whatever?
Well, it is hard. And going back to what you said about Sankey, I mean, he gets the credit for all the stuff he did. It's right now. To me, he's just got to, as powerful as he is, he's got to remember, who signs his check? It's the SEC. He's not there to make other conferences feel less inferior to the SEC. That's a disservice. If I'm the fastest guy on the court or on the track, I'm going to run you in the ground every time. I'm not going to let you even get close to me to make you feel good about yourself. I mean, I played handball with my dad into his mid-80s. Never, ever. It was always 21-19. Man wore a jock strap on his head. I had to earn everything I got, but I'd beat him. But my point is, the SEC has got to figure it out quickly because we are a passionate bunch of people. And, buddy, you referenced 100 years ago, Alabama was the 5th choice to go to that Rose Bowl. And they went on an 8-day train trip to play a Washington team that was the talk of the land. And it was 19-7 in the third quarter. Alabama came back and won 20-19. And on the train ride back, everywhere they stopped, thousands of people were there at the train station to meet them. Bands were playing. People had their babies, and they were wanting autographs and pictures. And they were greeted with open arms and love by every school in the South because the South had been emasculated after the war. We didn't have anything. Poverty, it was rough. It was rough. And football, we latched on to that. And that's what gives me an absolute confidence that the SEC will say, okay, we dropped the ball. Now we're going back after it. But it's good that Ohio State and Michigan are what they are because it keeps you from getting complacent. And you got to give credit. I tell you, man, I listened to the comments made by those kids for Ohio State. Wow, Jack Sawyer, Will Howard, Ryan Day. I don't know. What's not to like about them? They're good Christians. They're good people. I was like, damn. I don't know. I was going, congratulations. And Notre Dame, I'm Catholic. So, I mean, look,
right.
It's frustrating, but man, it makes it fun. And it gives us a hell of a lot to talk about every day. I can promise you.
I mean, well, and you talk about the beauty of football. We talked about, when Georgia was able to get over the hump. I mean, think about a guy like Jack Sawyer who grows up in Pickerington, Ohio, which is 20 minutes from the Ohio State campus, and the legend and being that. And it kind of brings us back again, buddy, you mentioned Florida, 6.5 wins. I just looked, maybe is the number from Vegas. They outperformed that number this year. I'm sure Gator fans will be looking for them to outperform that number again. But I think it's about that time, buddy, and we'll talk as we get into the Gators. We talked about Harrison Bailey, the transfer quarterback that I assume will be coming up, even though we all know that he will be told he will compete with DJ Lagway, will probably end up being the placeholder, the place saver in his 5th year.
That's established this time.
Yeah, I would say so too. But our good friend Billy Napier will say, everybody's competing. Harrison will have an opportunity. He's on his 4th. I think he started at Tennessee, UNLV, Louisville, and now will join the Florida Gators for the 2025 season. But, buddy, you like this. Who is the next guy for Florida? Is it, if it's not named DJ Lagway, who could be that person that as Florida possibly makes a run and brings himself back to national prominence? who's a name you like outside of DJ Lagway that will be that guy to, that this will be the guy that when we look back, man, I remember that play from that season in that playoff game. Who's your guy, buddy?
Well, the thing about it is it almost has to be a quarterback because that's the guy. If you haven't got look, here's what made the SEC what it was in 2005 and 6. And we talked about this, and Gary Danielson, first one to point it out to me. The SEC is getting ready to have a big dominant run. I said, why, Gary? They're getting the coaches and the quarterbacks. Look at the coaches they got during that time. And they got the quarterbacks. Get the coaches, the quarterbacks down. Now you have to have the money. That's the combination. Now, who's the guy? I guess it depends on who's there. It's going to have to be DJ Lagway, period. I love Jaden Ball. I just love him. I've been on his bandwagon from day one. I don't know that he can carry a team. And I don't know if there's another player I can single out to say, yeah, he's the it guy. It's got to be DJ Lagway. It's got to be, it's got to be the defense. It's got to be modifications. And they're going to have money and go get players. I don't know. I heard today that they only had one spot left for NIL players.
Wow.
So rosters, I don't know if that's accurate. I read something.
Right.
So.
Well, I know as far as one spot is concerned, and we talked about it in the open, the Gators do only have one spot on the coaching staff. And I think this is time for the truth. And we like to tell the truth on this show. We call it Tell It Like It Is Tuesday. I'm going to go on a limb and two things. And I'll bet Perry Mason, one of them, is that the first press conference, someone asked about Harrison Bailey. I guarantee Billy Napier says that they will be competing for the job. That's number one. Number two, I think that we're at the point where that you can almost bet that when it comes to the Florida Gators and these staff changes, we saw that Billy Gonzalez was renewed. Mike Peterson will be coming back. Rob Sale seems to be coming back. So the staff looks to be pretty much intact. What's that? And Jaluk was added. Yeah, we talked about that last week. Yeah. So there's one spot, and it looks like that's going to be somebody on defense, maybe a co-coordinator, things like that. So as much as people are clamoring for this offensive coordinator to come in, which I think if it would be somebody that was not a household name. But I think once again, we need to just resign ourselves to the fact that this ship is going to either rise or sink with Billy Napier as the primary play caller.
He's got to win 9 games. He's got to win 9 games.
Yeah, I just was checking to see if Brendan can put the 25 schedule up. But when I looked at the schedule, again, all these teams that you think are going to be good, it just doesn't happen that way. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't foresee Florida State having the worst team in school history, but I was like, they're not going to be as good as you think they are. And then you have to look at where games are. The Ole Miss game was just ripe for the taking, and the Gators and the LSU game. I mean, those were Florida's roster, as bad as a lot of Gator fans think things are, was still 9th best in the country. What does that tell you about this program? The Blue Chip Index, okay? That's how many 4- and 5-star players do you have on a roster in every 4-year cycle. Florida had 63% of their roster was 4- and 5-star players. And then you look at Auburn was 16th in the country. So these are two programs we cover a lot on the show. And now they're both – Florida's picked by On3 9th for next year, Auburn number 11. If Florida, the over and under people in Vegas, I know there's a lot of tall buildings out there for a lot of reasons, and it's obvious. But I want to see that Florida schedule. I'm not looking at it right now, but why shouldn't Florida win, like Buddy just said? Got to win at least 9 games. And if they're 8-1 late in the season, do you honestly think they're only going to win one more of those final games?
Well,
when they're smelling a championship, get out of the way.
I can run it down for you, buddy. So we're looking at the schedule. We talk about 9 wins, and you got LIU first, Long Island University, about Ryan Cooper, South Florida, LSU,
LSU
at LSU, at Miami,
might be a L, could be a possibility.
at LSU, at Miami, home at
I
Texas,
think they beat Miami.
at Texas A&M,
It might be an L.
at home against Mississippi State,
W.
cocktail party. That's going to be interesting, I think, next year. I think that's going to be a lot more interesting. I mean, it could have got interesting this year if Lagway doesn't get hurt.
DJ Lagway plays a full 60. Gators win.
Yeah.
Okay. At Lexington, Kentucky,
W.
and then at Ole Miss late in the season. Same
W.
W. And then at home against Tennessee.
W.
And home against Florida State.
W.
So you got it right around 10-2, 9-3, buddy. Rob, you agree with that?
Why not? I mean, the Gators offensively, DJ Lagway, whoever the coordinator is going to look like a genius.
Well, Billy's going to be the coordinator. I mean, look, you can talk about that all you want to. I saw a bulletin today. Billy Donovan, I'm a basketball brain.
Billy Napier.
Napier is not going to hire a coordinator. Duh.
Right.
I don't think he ever was going to hire one.
Who said that, buddy? Long time ago. Give him my due now.
Well, I mean, you did. I did. Everybody did. I mean, everybody cried for it, and Shane kept saying it ain't going to happen, and it ain't going to happen. And he's a play caller, so he's going to let the tight end coach blow the decisions. But you know what it's like on the headset, Lauren? On the headset.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
You got the game plan going in. What are you doing 4th and 2 when you're inside the red zone? What are you? You have these automatic calls.
Right.
Well, I do think it's going to be a really good year. It's a 9-win. Dare I say 10? I think 8 or 9 win season. So 8 would keep him from getting fired. 9 would give him a raise, and they got to get in the playoffs. That's the thing. It's just have to get in.
Right. So it's 8 in the regular season or bust. You think?
Yeah.
8 in the regular season or bust.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to our sponsor, Titan MRI. We're there, Mr. Producer. Titan MRI and Imaging.
That's
Gainesville,
right.
North Central Florida's newest premier independent diagnostic service under new management. Correct, buddy? Under new management,
right. And
new ownership, and but still giving you the same quality care. Mm-hmm. You can go, no insurance, no appointment needed. Walk in. They have the large MRI facility, the big beds for people like myself who are claustrophobic, and they'll take care of you. Titan MRI, North Central Florida's newest premier independent diagnostic MRI facility. So, buddy, let's kind of go back to your 9 wins, 8 wins. Is that a hard stop to not seeing a coaching change? You think?
How do you mean hard stop?
If he doesn't win 8, we'll find a new coach.
I'd say somebody's got to go, and maybe Billy. I don't know if the political will is there and the money is there. That'll keep the. By the way, I'm going to plug Freddie Weeby that wrote a really brilliant thing. It's 10 points on his assessment of the playoffs, how it happened, what it's going to take. I'm going to have him on Thursday night. We're going to talk a little bit about that. He has a very smart, analytical mind. It seems though he's in a really good place right now. He has a chance to make hay now. If you got to people got to know that we're making advancements. You got to feel, Rob, like this is getting better. They aren't going to settle for the same old, same old. So, do I think Billy's capable? Yes. Do I think he will? I think he will. But if he doesn't win 8, it's trouble.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think I like the fact that the staff stayed intact. I think with the year that they had, I would not make a lot of changes. And when you start looking at the staff, I mean, you're talking about some really good guys. Jabbar Jaluk, probably top, running back coach in the country. Like you said, I mean, Billy Gonzalez, we all know how we feel about Coach Billy G. I mean, Mike Peterson, 14-year NFL vet, Alachua County native. I mean, just being dialed in to the alumni, the NFL. And then, you look at the job that guys that Will Smith did in the secondary. I mean, the improvements. Florida finishing top 10 in sacks with Chapman. I mean, the staff and Ron Roberts. I mean, I think Ron Roberts made you out to be right in your assessment of what Ron Roberts could do for a defense. And then they go out and get another defensive guy to help with that, and maybe coach help with the safeties or however you want to do it, linebackers, and go from there. But I think keeping this staff in place is a good thing for what, and I've talked to a couple people on the staff. I mean, they're really pleased with where this football team is. A lot of good things to say about a guy like LJ McCray, who's really poised to take the next step. I was talking to somebody about Miles Graham. I know you're a big Miles Graham guy, buddy. These guys, I mean, don't look at what I was told is don't look at the transfers and the guys that left necessarily as a reason to, in fairness to Billy Napier, as a negative. Because what I was told, I was just told this Sunday at a basketball game, the young boys are coming and they're good. And that's what somebody told me. I mean, they said these young kids are really, really good. And if the season would have been 1 or 2 more games, you would have seen a lot more. Those young kids just are really starting to figure it out. And this roster in their mind is poised to take the next step. And we've talked about it.
Yeah,
Billy Napier, go ahead.
I'm just saying, you said the young boys is coming. Me and Rob thought you were talking about us.
No.
That's right.
Well, you never left, buddy. But no, I mean, it's just, I mean, they do. They have a young group. They were the only school in the country to have 3 5-star receivers in the recruiting class. So, I mean, in fairness, and I've been as critical as anybody, but when you look at it,
let's see Lauren Meadows. Get your pom-poms out, brother. Let's go.
No, not yet. You got to look at it from an X and O. I mean, like you said, when you've been in that headset and you've been under the gun, there are things that can happen. But Rob, I mean, I think you touched on it. The roster was already ranked 9th, and there's really no doubt that they may have been one of the SEC's best teams late in the year. So that roster strength did show itself at times, but it's just going to be interesting. That's why they play the games.
Look, everything's about perception. My dad told me one time, if you lead a good life, when you die, you'll go to heaven. The English will be in charge of the administration, the French in charge of the cooking, the Italians in charge of the arts, and the Germans in charge of the police. If you end up dying and you go to hell, the English will be in charge of the cooking, the French in charge of the administration, the Germans in charge of the arts, and the Italians in charge of the police. Think about that. British cooking was a joke. It was a laughing stock. They were known, like the Irish, for their whiskey. The food was just terrible until Gordon Ramsay came along. Okay? It's all about who you got there. All this people thinking Florida football, you cannot keep a program like Florida football down unless it's intentional. And if you noticed, there was no coaching turnover among head coaches in the SEC this year. It's too damn expensive. You've got the $21 million surcharge called the House settlement, which will be finalized. It looks like it's going to go the way that, in April, okay, when the judge rules. So if you fire a coach now, add 21 million to it. It's like a tax. So people are going to start saying, okay, rather than fire the head coach and go buy out all these assistant contracts, let's go get the Chip Kelly deal, the Ohio State model. You're going to see more of that. Guy says, I'll work for a couple of million instead of 6 million or whatever. That's where we're going. It's too much upheaval and too much money. And then you got to turn around and ask your people to keep pumping money into NIL. I think pretty soon we're going to see public finance deals to finance NIL programs and sell tax-free bonds. They're gonna sell the debt. You can be a bond buyer, buy $100,000 worth of Florida.
I like junk bonds for college football. Here we go.
It's that Michael Milken got out of prison and rebuilt Las Vegas with junk bonds. That's where we're going to go in college. Public finance. You buy a $100,000 block of Gator bonds paying 5% tax-free, and you're supporting NIL, and you got 20 years with 7 years call protection. That's where we're going. It's the only way we can handle this.
Rob, you're a
people
smart
can't
guy.
do
You may be the commissioner before long.
No doubt. Absolutely.
Well, I'll have y'all on my team. I can tell you that.
So as we get ready to, close it out, what is, so as we go and people want to, talk about football, but there is still a spring, there's still basketball left to play. So let's say, let's throw January aside and let's get into February, March, April. And as it relates to the SEC and everything that we have going on in sports, what are you looking to most to get us through the spring into the summer where we really start talking about football, buddy?
I'll tell you what I look for, and that is you got to fall back in love with college football. Your relationships have been damaged. Rob, you talk to people every day who are upset about these NIL deals. They don't like the way the game is structured. They're losing some of the populace who love the game. The loyalists, you can't dump on your populace and your loyalists and expect them to follow you forever. Teach them, let them fall back in love with the game. We all fell in love with college football at some point in time. Yeah. I think if you start there and say, okay, I'm going to do what I can do to help my school, whatever it may be. Maybe I only got $25 a month to send in, whatever it takes, because it does take money. But remember, it's still the greatest game there is. There's still great hope for your college teams. Change can be brought about soon. Don't get discouraged about the Big Ten. They won't be on top forever. Like Louis Kazard used to say, the sun don't shine on the same dog's ass every day. So there's going to be change. We want to change. We got change. I'm ready to get back to some more stability.
Rob, what do you think?
Well, I think Buddy made great points there. And I think when I look at all these different programs, why did we fall in love with college football? I mean, because when we were kids, we identified we all want to be part of something, okay? We want to belong to something. It's like if you ever find a stray dog and you go buy it a collar, that dog will love you. My wife pointed that out because they want to belong to something. And I get so excited about doing our morning show, SEC Sidelines on this channel, coming on your show, and I'm never going to say something just to placate an audience to make them feel good. I'll tell you what I think. I will never back down in terms of telling the truth. I love talking about this stuff. I love getting on here, talking about the Gators with a bunch of people that will make you think. And we've got an audience that's second to none that holds us accountable. But Buddy's right. It's the romance of college football. Hell, I've got a Pat Sullivan jersey that I took it out of. I didn't want anything to happen to it. I ended up putting it in my console. I got that thing when I was like 7 years old, and he autographed it back in 2008. And, he died December 1st of 2019. But we grow up loving and reading the stories. I mean, when David Housel introduced me in 1981 after the Auburn, Florida game to Jack Hairston, and they opened up the trunk and I watched them have some cocktails, all these writers gather around. That's when I was like, this is so cool to be around these great storytellers, like an artist colony. And we need to glorify these great writers like Buddy Martin. And nothing makes me more angry than when a writer like Buddy says, I'm too old. Nobody cares what I say. The hell they don't. We cherish everything Buddy says. And what all these writers do. Tony Barnhart, when Paul Feinbaum made the comment on the show Friday about there's a disconnect starting to grow, that's sounding the alarm, people. Let's wake up and fight for what we love. Let's don't lose this because it is the greatest game in the history of the world.
Well said.
Well,
can I just
go ahead? Yes, sir. Absolutely. Anytime.
Hey, that Rob's exactly right. I want to be sure and thank my friends at Rent Star. And again, it goes back to loyalty. These people have been supporting me, supporting college football, the Gators, and they're good friends of mine. They've been so supportive. I want to mention them by name: Mary Brantley, the wife of Scott Brantley. All the best to Scott. He's been under the weather naturally. And Joe Sorrentino, who's the head of – he and Mary started this business. Of course, their son is Joey, the dentist. Everybody's all practice there in town on Caledon and Lady Lake. And Joe has been a big Gator supporter for many, many moons. Their big thing is They want information. They want information to know how to formulate the prescriptions in the future and send out the database to people about people who live in North Central Florida. They get that through clinical trials. Rob, tell them what a clinical trial is and why it's important that they get that information.
I think our man Lauren has forgotten more than all of us.
Clinical trials are important just because it allows you to test something with integrity. A lot of times there's third parties involved, so it's not subjective. It's very objective, and there are parameters in place, and it really provides you with the information that you need to, particularly when you're talking about a drug or, like you said, Buddy, there's a sample size, and the broader the sample size, but it just gives people comfort, and it allows you to market something with honesty and truth, and it proves that a lot of times it's safety or just protocols that things are in place that allow you to know that things work. And there you go. And with that, I'll say, I know we talked about football, but I think with where the conference is in the SEC, I cannot wait to get to March Madness and see what this league is going to do to get back to prominence in basketball. So
they're back tomorrow night.
Back at it, yeah. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to see one of the best Southeastern Conference tournaments that we've seen in quite some time. And then I think you're going to have at least 10 to 11, 12, even 13 teams march into the tournament, and 7 or 8 have a real shot to get to the second weekend. And if you get to the second weekend, you can go to the Final Four. So, Rob, who you got on tomorrow?
Got former LSU coach John Brady, who's the color analyst on the Tiger Basketball Network. He'll be on with us. Got one of our interns, Oakley McFerrin, will join us. Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net. Vince Ferrara, the sports animal in Knoxville. And, of course, the executive producer, Brendan Martin, the son of Wilton. Man, we have a blast, and we'll put out a lot of graphics, lots of information, and appreciate everybody watching us and supporting us. And, man, we got a great family team that we get together and do this. And I get so excited doing this and reading the comments from the people, and they keep us in line. You know what I'm saying? They will tell us, but we're always going to tell the truth on this show. And I think you're right. Florida's lost twice. And that shows you the respect that Todd Golden and the Gator basketball team has. They're still 5th in the country. And the team that beat them, Missouri, the other night, or Kentucky, knew they weren't that great.
Yeah, Buddy, who you got on tomorrow? Back at it.
Oh, actually, we got Allie back. We had Allie and Scott Carter on, and we may have another surprise guest. You never know. Back at it tomorrow, full steam on. Be sure and join us on the program. And on Thursday night, we're going to have Freddie Weeby, and of course, Rob, you'll be on there with us as well. And Lauren, you'll be on with us. I'm Lauren. I get you guys mixed up.
That's all right. But we appreciate you. Appreciate you both being on. Rob, SEC Sideline Sports, the great Buddy Martin, my friend, my mentor, and yours truly, Lauren Meadows. Thank you for joining us this evening on Tell It Like It Is Tuesday. Appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot.
You bet. Anytime.